Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into a palace where the curtains never fully open, where every corridor feels like it's holding its breath, and where you, yes, you, somehow dragged into royal service despite your complete lack of palace training, are about to discover the very first spark of the Queen's lifelong obsession with mourning. You can already feel the hush in the air, the cool marble under your feet, and the weight of fabric brushing your arms as if the walls themselves are dressed for a funeral. And honestly, with the way things are going, you probably won't survive this without at least a mild anxiety wrinkle. So, good luck. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I love knowing how far these late-night wanderings travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge across a courtyard still wet from last night's rain, noticing how the puddles reflect the low-burning torches in warping streaks. You're being escorted, well, pushed, by a steward with a voice so tight it could be used to tune a lute. He keeps telling you to walk faster, even though his legs are half the length of yours. It's fine. You're new here. You're learning. He doesn't say much, but you overhear a few snippets from servants whispering along the edges of the walkway. She started early again. The drapes in the West Hall are already changed. Not a good sign. You begin to notice how everyone's footsteps automatically slow when approaching the palace doors, like the air is reminding them to behave. It's the kind of forced quiet people use in hospitals, libraries, and when trying not to wake a baby, except here, the baby is a fully grown monarch with the emotional volatility of a candle flame. There's a fact historians agree on about many early modern queens. Grief could become political. A royal widow's dress colour could decide alliances, shape diplomacy, even signal who was allowed to speak. But in this palace, the Queen turns that normal political theatre into a full-blown lifestyle, and you're about to see the moment it starts. The steward drags you into the eastern antechamber, a room lit entirely by wall sconces because, apparently, opening windows is considered disruptive to the Queen's atmosphere. The air smells faintly of lavender and something sharper, cloves maybe, poured heavily into the oil burners. She finds it calming, the steward mutters, though the twitch in his left eye suggests otherwise. You glance at a long table draped in dark velvet, and you can't help but reach out and touch its edge. It's soft. Too soft. Suspiciously soft. Soft in the way that means extremely expensive. A maid swats your hand away with a speed that implies she's been trained by falconers. This is your first real moment to observe the palace's atmosphere, and you begin noticing details you weren't prepared for. For instance, every portrait on the wall has been retouched. Characters who were once painted in vibrant reds and golds now wear muted blacks, smoky greys, or a kind of dramatic navy blue you've only ever seen in boutique perfume ads. You even catch a dog in one painting wearing a tiny mourning ruff. That poor dog has no idea what's happening. A fringe historical tidbit slips into your mind. There was once a European duchess who forced her stable hands to dress horses in black caparisons for months after her favourite canary died. Mourning culture could get creative. But what you see here, this is something else. This is curated grief, designer sorrow, haute couture sadness. The steward leads you through a set of double doors, and suddenly the entire palace seems to inhale at once. A collective intake of breath, a shift in temperature, a hush that falls so quickly you can almost hear the silence being applied like a blanket. There she is. The Queen stands before a tall window, her silhouette framed against the faint morning light that just tries, to slip past her heavy velvet drapes. She's not old, not yet. Her youth makes the intensity of her posture feel sharper. She wears a gown of deep black satin, embroidered with threads so dark they only reveal themselves when she moves. Her hair is pinned back, precise, severe. You get the sense she'd personally fire anyone who left a single curl out of place. Her hand rests on a small object, something wrapped carefully in silk. And when she turns toward you, her eyes are rimmed with a redness that suggests she's been crying for hours, but the tears have stopped just long enough for her to function. "Another one," she murmurs. You're not sure if she means another servant or another tragedy. Honestly, both seem possible. You bow awkwardly because you have no idea what's appropriate. The steward elbows you helpfully in the ribs to encourage a deeper bow. Pain blossoms. You do it anyway. "Rise," the Queen says softly, her voice as smooth as melted wax, yet carrying the unmistakable pressure of authority. You straighten up, trying not to make eye contact too directly. You've heard rumours, everyone has, about how she reacts when someone stares too boldly into her eyes. Some say she believes mourners should lower their gaze in solidarity. Others say she just hates being looked at before noon. Historians still argue whether her aversion comes from trauma, superstition, or simply a bad experience with early morning portrait sessions. "The palace mourns today," she continues, "and you will learn how to mourn with it." You nod, though you have absolutely no clue what that means. You assume mourning involves sadness, maybe slow walking, possibly handkerchiefs. You brace for all of that. But then she unwraps the silk bundle. Inside is a small porcelain music box. Delicate. White with tiny roses painted on the lid. Not broken, not burned, not even scratched. Just old. "This belonged to my sister," she says. "Today is the anniversary." You feel a ripple through the room. Servants stiffen, guards look down. A maid squeezes her own wrist as if bracing for impact. Everyone reacts like this day carries a sacred, trembling significance. But you notice something no one speaks about. On the far wall there's a row of similar objects. A hair comb wrapped in lace, a child's slipper, a cracked fan, a book, an embroidered handkerchief, each placed on its own pedestal, each covered in a dark cloth like relics in a cathedral. More than one object, many, many more. You suddenly realize this isn't a yearly ritual, it's a near-daily one. Every time the Queen remembers someone she's lost, even remotely, tangentially, imaginatively, the palace enters mourning. Some of these losses are legitimate, some are questionable. There's a rumour that she once declared a day of silence for a tree that fell in a storm too soon. You watch as she sets the music box gently on a table. She doesn't open it, doesn't wind it, just places it there as though the act alone is its own ceremony. Her voice drops to a murmur. "Grief is a companion," she says. "A shadow that never abandons you. You understand that, don't you?" You don't. You absolutely do not. The last major loss in your life was when your favourite bakery stopped selling those cinnamon pastries you liked, but you nod anyway, because you enjoy having your head remain attached to your body. She steps closer. The room tilts slightly with her movement. Or maybe that's just your nerves. "Good," she whispers. "Then you will serve me well." A servant strikes a small bell, a gentle chime that echoes like crystal in cold air. Everyone moves, you move with them, swept up in a tide of silent purpose. The mourning ritual begins. You follow them to the hall of petitions where every torch has been dimmed, every banner replaced with black silk, and even the stone lions at the entrance are wearing veiled coverings. You can't help but chuckle softly at one point because one of the lions looks distinctly annoyed under its drape, and that earns you a few scandalized glances. Oops, joke quota reached. Your job, apparently, is to stand near the Queen and hand her ceremonial handkerchiefs, not for use, for symbolism. She never actually blows her nose. You're warned about this 3 separate times. As she walks, the hall seems to ripple with the tension of unspoken stories. She sees mourning as devotion, and everyone else sees mourning as survival, because if they fail to keep up, the consequences are swift and socially devastating. You hear faint whispers. Last year, she dismissed a lady-in-waiting for wearing grey instead of charcoal. The horror. Through it all, you watch her, every step, every small stiffness in her posture. You realize this is not performance. This is not politics. This is something that owns her from the inside, something heavy and unrelenting. And as you walk beside her in that dim hall, carrying a stack of spotless black handkerchiefs like the world's saddest waiter, you sense that her first obsession has already taken root. Soon it will spread. Soon it will reshape the palace, its routines, its halls, its expectations, and eventually, you just don't know it yet. You trail behind the Queen as the morning thickens into that strange, quiet half-light. The palace seems permanently soaked in. Black silk before dawn, your new normal. You never imagined you would one day participate in a ritual where even the sunrise feels like it needs permission to speak. But here you are, shuffling through corridors while clutching a bundle of symbolic handkerchiefs like they're precious relics instead of overpriced squares of fabric. The Queen moves ahead of you, her gown trailing behind like a living shadow. Every few steps, the silk whispers along the floor, soft, long, lingering, the kind of sound that would be comforting if it wasn't also vaguely threatening, like a lullaby whispered by someone who might stab you with embroidery scissors if you hummed the wrong harmony. You're beginning to learn that mourning here isn't reactive, it's scheduled. And nothing showcases that better than the pre-dawn protocols. You turn a corner, entering a corridor where the windows are tall enough to make you feel like you're walking inside a bookshelf. Except every single window is covered. Heavy black silk curtains hang so densely that not even the faintest outline of dawn slips through. It's like the Queen has declared war on photons. Fun historical fact. Some royal households in the 17th and 18th centuries really did impose rules on light during mourning periods. Candles instead of daylight, tinted glass, or even forbidden sunlit gatherings. But the Queen, she took that idea, dipped it in espresso, rolled it in anxiety, and sautéed it in unresolved trauma. Then she served it to everyone else. "Hold," a chamberlain says ahead of you, raising a gloved hand. Every servant freezes, you freeze too, mostly because everyone else does, but also because you're terrified of accidentally walking past someone with a title. Rank is deadly here. Even your shoelaces have a higher rank than you. The chamberlain gestures to 2 servants holding an enormous bolt of black silk. They begin replacing the curtain on the north-facing window, even though the existing curtain looks absolutely fine. Apparently the Queen insists the fabric be changed before every dawn so the palace may wake in fresh sorrow. That phrase alone could win Best Emotional Melodrama at the Royal Theatre Festival. While they work, you lean slightly to peek around them, just enough to catch a razor-thin glimpse of the morning light trying to creep under the drapes. It's warm, soft, beautifully ordinary, and it feels a bit illegal. "Don't!" someone hisses at you. You straighten up like you've been caught stealing diamonds. "It upsets her," the maid whispers. "Sunrise reminds her of that morning." That morning. You didn't need the capital letters spelled out. You can hear them in her tone. Something happened at sunrise long ago, something the Queen has never allowed anyone to forget. And you feel a chill that has nothing to do with the drafty stone floor. Historians still debate whether her fixation started with a genuine tragedy or a layered mix of trauma, superstition, and royal pressure. Some say her sister's death occurred just as dawn broke. Others claim the Queen once believed she saw an omen in the light, a sweeping bird, a glimmering reflection, an ill-timed shadow that convinced her daylight was an intruder. The truth is tangled, contested, and thoroughly buried under layers of protocol. But inside this palace, no one questions it. You continue walking once the chamberlain nods and your footsteps fall into sync with the others. Quiet, even, practiced. Everyone has perfected the art of the muffled step. Heel down softly, roll forward, lift gently. If someone ever made a sneaker inspired by this silence technique, it'd definitely sell out on TikTok. "We begin in the East Hall," the steward announces without looking back. "Remember your placement. Your presence must not distract. You already know this means do not exist unless instructed. Palace translation is becoming a skill. The East Hall smells like sandalwood and cold stone. Its ceilings rise high enough to echo, but no sound ever does, thanks to the yards of black silk draped strategically along the walls. The fabric absorbs noise, absorbs light, absorbs any chance of joy. If happiness walked into this room, it would immediately turn around and apologize for bothering everyone. You wait at the designated position near the Queen's shoulder, holding the ceremonial handkerchiefs with both hands. You try to look somber. You try not to lock your knees, because fainting dramatically seems frowned upon. You definitely try not to sneeze, though the smell of sandalwood is waging war on your nostrils. The Queen takes a seat on a cushioned chair, black velvet, silver embroidery, mourning chic. Her posture is straight enough to slice through marble. A herald steps forward. "At first light," he declares, "the palace acknowledges remembrance." A second servant strikes a chime bowl with a padded mallet, and the soft ringing spills through the hall like water rippling across glass. You swear you feel it in your bones. This place is built to manipulate senses. The Queen lowers her eyes. Tears don't fall. She has perfected the art of the restrained, elegant, almost cry. You suspect she could patent it. A quiet chant begins, not quite prayer, not quite poem, but something carved from repetition over the years. You join in when the steward nudges you, speaking the words softly, though you have no idea what they mean. Some old liturgical formula, maybe from a time when monarchs believed mourning stabilized kingdoms. Another historical tidbit dances into your thoughts. There were monarchs who declared full mourning periods lasting over a year, even forbidding laughter in court. One medieval queen supposedly banned musical instruments entirely until she felt joy returning, which took, well, a very long time. But even their extremes pale next to your queen's daily devotion. While you mumble through the chant, you steal a glance at her. Her fingers rest lightly on her gown, tapping a slow, rhythmic pattern. You realize it's the same beat the music box might play if she ever wound it. A soft lullaby stitched into her muscle memory. A heaviness settles over your chest, not just from the room's gloomy atmosphere, but from the realization that her grief isn't only for show. It's carved into her, and like all carvings, it reshapes everything around it. The ritual continues. Servants approach one by one to place symbolic offerings, dark rose petals, folded letters, small objects wrapped in cloth. You're still struggling to learn what any of these signify, but you pretend you know. Pretending is a full-time job here. A noblewoman suddenly stumbles as she bows, and the room tenses like a bowstring pulled taut. Her candle tilts precariously, wax dripping onto the floor in slow-motion terror. You brace yourself. But the Queen doesn't react. Not a glare, Not a twitch. Nothing. She's somewhere far beyond this hall, drifting through memory instead of witnessing the physical world. The noblewoman trembles with relief, though she still appears one wardrobe malfunction away from fainting. Then, you feel it. A shift. A sudden trembling along the silk curtains. The dawn wind pushes harder against the windows and a faint glow seeps through a tiny gap the servants didn't close fully. It's barely a sliver, but in this room it's like a flare shot across the sky. The Queen's head lifts sharply. "Close it," she whispers. The hall freezes. Two servants sprint to fix the curtain, their hands fumbling, desperate. The Queen watches the light vanish with a tension so profound it chills you. "Dawn intrudes," she says softly, as if speaking to someone only she can hear. "It always intrudes." You feel the truth now. She doesn't merely mourn loss, she mourns sunrise itself. She mourns beginnings, new days, fresh starts. The palace isn't just living in grief, it's living outside of time. When the ceremony ends, the Queen rises. You follow, trying to match her pace. Her shadow stretches before her, long and unbroken. "Silk is the first defense," she murmurs as you exit the hall. It keeps the mourning from touching what must remain untouched. You nod obediently, though internally you're thinking, "Wow, this woman would definitely hate beach vacations." She glances at you briefly, her eyes softer than before. You learn quickly. You don't know whether that's a compliment or a warning, but as you step into the next corridor and feel the heavy fabric brushing your shoulder, you sense that this morning your first full initiation into her world has marked you. You've seen how mourning dictates every movement, every breath, every ray of stolen light. And tomorrow, you'll do it again. Before dawn, before sunlight, before hope has a chance to slip through the curtains. You follow the Queen through a narrow passageway, lined with tall, arched mirrors, though you only realize they're mirrors after squinting, because every single one of them has been covered. Heavy black cloth drapes each reflective surface like little shrouds pinned neatly at the corners. If you didn't know better, you'd assume someone had thrown a very dramatic funeral for the concept of self-awareness. This is the mirror she covers, your third lesson in the Queen's evolving architecture of grief. You've gotten used to the rustle of her silk gowns by now, that whispery sweep across the floor as she moves, but something about this corridor deepens the sound, amplifies it, threads it with a strange echo. You suddenly wonder what the corridor would look like uncovered, with light bouncing from mirror to mirror, turning her dark silhouette into a flickering procession. Maybe that's exactly why she keeps them covered. "Do not touch the drapes," a footman whispers to you, urgently, breathlessly, because you were leaning ever so slightly too close. She believes mirrors hold moments. You blink. "Moments?" He nods. "Reflections of joy, reflections of sorrow, reflections of things that linger." Okay, so mirrors are memory traps now. Cool? Add that to your growing "palace things I'm afraid of" list, right between accidentally speaking too loudly and stairs. A historical fact floats into your thoughts. Some Victorian households really did cover mirrors after a death. People believed spirits could become trapped in them, or that one might accidentally glimpse the dead lingering nearby. But your Queen isn't observing an old custom. She's escalating it, refining it, industrializing it. When she reaches the end of the corridor, she stops before the largest mirror of all. The drape covering this one is thicker than the rest, edged with silver thread. 2 guards flank it, stiff as table legs. She raises her hand. The guards step forward, not to remove the cloth, but to tighten its edges, pulling it taut. The Queen watches with meticulous focus, the way a jeweler inspects a diamond. Reflections lie, she says softly, and your skin prickles at the sound of it. They pretend to show the world as it is, but they keep pieces. They keep what they wish. You swallow, unsure whether to respond. She doesn't seem to expect an answer anyway. The corridor feels colder, somehow deeper, like it has folded in on itself. A palace maid hurries forward, carrying a bowl of dark water, ink, mixed with something that smells faintly of iron. She dips her fingers into the liquid and splashes it lightly across the lower edge of the draped mirror. The black water leaves dotted stains that look like falling shadows. You whisper, "What does that do?" The steward murmurs back, "It ensures the mirror remains blind." Right, because blind mirrors are apparently a thing now. There's a fringe tidbit you once overheard from the palace archivist. The Queen started covering mirrors after her sister's death, but the superstition predated even that. Some believed reflections didn't show faces, they revealed souls. And the Queen, shattered by grief, feared what her soul might look like reflected back at her. Historians still argue whether this obsession stems from trauma, religious mysticism, or a political strategy to appear ethereal and unreachable. But inside the palace, explanations don't matter, only obedience does. The Queen turns to you suddenly. "Do you know what a reflection steals?" she asks. You freeze. There is absolutely no correct answer here. You begin. "Light?" She studies you. Then to your shock, she laughs softly, a rare sound, but not unkind. "Everything steals light," she says. "Reflections steal presence." Okay, great. Presence theft. You'll just avoid every reflective surface forever. No problem. She walks ahead, and you trail behind her, noticing how even the faintest shimmer of her jewelry is muted. Nothing bright is allowed too close to a mirror. Light must not tempt the cloth. Your foot accidentally bumps a small wooden crate set against the wall. The lid slides open just enough to reveal a bundle of smaller, undraped mirrors, hand mirrors, broken shards, fragments with jagged edges wrapped in velvet. Some pieces seem ancient, others recently collected. You crouch instinctively, curiosity tugging at you, but then a guard steps forward and shuts the crate with a single sharp movement. His expression isn't threatening, but it is mournful, like he's closing a tomb. The Queen continues on, unaware, or very aware. It's difficult to tell with her. You follow into a smaller room, circular, domed ceiling, a single skylight blocked by thick cloth. The space is dim, permeated by the scent of beeswax and lavender. Shelves line the walls, filled with tiny objects, combs, perfume bottles, ribbons, brooches, all wrapped, all muffled, all silenced. A woman stands near the centre, her hair pinned into a neat bun, her chin firm. She wears the robes of a palace ritualist, the kind of person who takes mourning and gives it structural integrity. "My Queen," she says, bowing. "We are ready." The Queen nods. "Proceed." You step aside with the others as the ritualist approaches the covered mirror. She holds a thin brush dipped in dark oil and begins painting symbols directly onto the cloth. Spirals, lines, curving shapes that resemble tears and suns and seeds all at once. You're not sure if these marks have meaning or if they're purely aesthetic, but you pretend to understand. Pretending is still your top skill. The Queen watches intently. "These symbols," the ritualist says, "ensure memory remains inward, not outward." Ah, so mirrors aren't just visual, they're portals of emotional leakage. You are absolutely never buying a mirror again. A faint joke bubbles to the surface of your consciousness. You wonder if your reflection is somewhere cowering behind its own drape, traumatized by your lack of sleep. But you hold the joke in, mostly. A tiny smile escapes, and the steward elbows you again. His elbow has become the palace's unofficial disciplinary tool at this point. When the ritualist finishes, she bows and the queen steps closer. She places her hand on the cloth in the center of the mirror. The room holds its breath. You feel an odd shift, like pressure in the air changes, like the memory of a storm rumbling through your bones. She whispers, "Let what remains be mine alone." Then her hand drifts downward, fingers brushing the embroidered silver edges, tracing a path she must have followed dozens, maybe hundreds of times. "This mirror," she says, turning slightly toward you, was the last to show her face. Her sister. The one whose death has become the queen's anchor, her ritual, her shadow. You feel something tighten in your throat. Not fear, not quite sympathy. Something more complex, like grief by proximity. "She was laughing," the queen continues. "That is what I saw, that is what remains, and I refuse to let the world steal it." Her voice is fragile enough to crack porcelain. You suddenly understand it isn't the mirror she fears, it's losing what little memory she still possesses, like the reflection might one day fade or distort, leaving her with nothing real. The queen steps back. "Cover it again." The guards fold a second layer of silk over the mirror, sealing it fully, the way you might close a letter you're afraid to reread. As they secure the edges, the queen turns to leave, drifting past you like a soft storm you can feel but can't touch. You follow. But just before you exit the room, you glance back at the mirror, now double-shrouded, silent, blind. You wonder what it sees beneath all those layers, what it remembers, what it holds for her, and more importantly, what it holds for you now that you're part of this world of curated sorrow. Because whether you planned it or not, you're in the Queen's reflection now. Covered or not, you follow the Queen into the West Wing, where the palace begins to smell faintly of warm bread, roasted nuts, and something buttery that makes your stomach perk up like a hopeful puppy. For a moment, just a moment, you think, "Oh good, breakfast." Finally, something normal, sweet, naive you. There is nothing normal about breakfast in a palace built on ritualized sorrow. This is breakfast in quiet morning, the place where food meets funeral energy and forks are treated like sacred relics rather than eating utensils. You enter a long dining hall draped once again in the Queen's signature aesthetic. Dark fabrics, dim lighting, and absolutely no reflective surfaces. Even the cutlery is matte silver so dull it refuses to shine, which honestly feels rude. Let spoons sparkle, they've done nothing wrong. A row of servants, each dressed in charcoal grey livery, stand ready with trays. No one speaks, no one blinks. One guy might have died 3 minutes ago, not sure. Hard to tell. You take your designated place behind the Queen's left shoulder. Your job is still unclear, but you're pretty confident it involves standing here and definitely not ruining everything. The Queen sits at the head of the table. Her chair is taller than everyone else's, embroidered with threads so black they seem to absorb light. You swear that if you dropped a flashlight near her seat, the beam would curve away like it had manners. She places her hands gently on the tablecloth, dark velvet, of course, and the room stills. A footman clears his throat so softly it might qualify as a ghost sound. "Commence the meal," he whispers. Servants begin placing dishes in front of her. Poached pears, warm milk steeped with lavender, slices of bread so thin you can nearly see through them. Nothing has colour, nothing glistens, everything looks melancholic. You lean toward another servant and whisper, "Is this normal breakfast?" He widens his eyes. The Queen believes bright food mocks grief. Ah, yes. Heaven forbid a strawberry outshines sorrow. A historical fact flutters into your mind. After major deaths, some royal courts really did restrict food colour. serving pale or muted dishes as a sign of collective mourning. But those traditions lasted weeks or months, not forever. Your queen has taken a temporary practice and converted it into a permanent operating system. You watch as she lifts her spoon, again matte, unreflective, aggressively sad, and takes a slow sip of lavender milk. She closes her eyes like she's listening to an invisible symphony. Around her, nobles begin eating as well, their movements synchronized. Every gesture is graceful, slow, deliberate. There are no clinks of silverware, no whispers, no chewing noises. If someone here chews too loudly, you're pretty sure they'd be escorted out the nearest window, gently, but still out. You shift your weight slightly and your shoe scuffs against the floor. The sound echoes far louder than it should in your anxiety-amplified ears. 5 nobles glance your way in horror. One drops her spoon. It bounces once, on the table. The queen opens her eyes. Time stops. Your soul detaches. Somewhere a baker drops a pastry, but instead of punishing you, the queen simply says, "Someone is troubled this morning." Not you, thank the heavens. The noble who dropped the spoon goes pale, bending into a bow so deep she might find lost floor tiles. "It won't happen again, Your Majesty," she whispers, trembling with that specific fear nobles get when they've mildly inconvenienced someone powerful. The queen gently waves her off. Grief unsettles all of us. Eat. The noble nods, relieved but sweating enough to refill the lavender milk jug. You exhale quietly. As breakfast continues, you start noticing the strange rules shaping the ritual. Rule 1, no food with crunch. Crunch, 6 cheerfulness. The queen forbids cheerfulness before noon. Rule 2, no speaking unless addressed directly by the queen. She rarely addresses anyone. Rule 3, the queen must take the first and last bite. If she stops eating early, the entire table fasts in solidarity. Several nobles look like they are praying she's hungry today. Rule 4, all servers must walk in diagonals, not straight lines. Apparently, straight lines cut through the emotional atmosphere. You accepted this without question because honestly you're too tired to challenge geometry right now. You also notice something else, a small wrapped object beside the queen's plate. Not the music box from earlier, something new. A tiny silver brooch covered in black gauze. Each mourning ritual has an object. Each object carries a story. And each story seems to be getting heavier. Halfway through the meal, the queen pauses her spoon mid-air, as if remembering something. Her gaze drifts toward a window, already covered in thick velvet. She doesn't need to see the outside to know the day has fully begun. "It was breakfast when they told me," she murmurs. The entire table freezes. You freeze. Even the candles seem to stop flickering. "It was a morning like this," she continues, her voice soft but steady. "A quiet table. Calm weather. And then—" She stops. The sentence hovers, unformed, trembling. Historians still argue whether this was the day her sister died, or whether the queen associates an entirely different wound with breakfast. Some suggest she collapsed that morning from exhaustion. Others think a political betrayal occurred during the meal. Records are inconsistent, probably edited by palace scribes who were terrified of writing the wrong version. She lowers her head, fingers brushing the wrapped brooch. The gesture is so subtle, so fragile, that it makes your chest ache. A long silence follows. Then, unexpectedly, she straightens. "Continue." The servants resume. The nobles resume. Everything snaps back into the carefully orchestrated rhythm of ritualized sorrow. You're handed a tray of additional food to hold: soft cheese, greyish porridge, poached apples. You nod politely at the food as if to say, "Yes, hello, sadness snacks." You take a small step backward, and that's when you notice something you shouldn't have. One of the mirrors on the far wall, previously covered, has a tiny tear in its cloth, just enough to reveal a thin sliver of glass. just enough to show the faint blur of candlelight. You stare at it. The reflection is distorted, not broken, just bent. Like time is folding around it. The Queen follows your gaze. Her spoon stops. Her jaw clenches. She rises. Everyone else rises immediately. Chairs scraping softly, plates trembling. You nearly drop the tray, catching it at the last second with the reflexes of someone who suddenly values life. She approaches the torn cloth, her expression unreadable. The hall holds its breath. With a steady hand, she touches the rip. Her fingertip hovers over the exposed glass, but doesn't touch it. Then she whispers, "Cover it." Her voice is calm. Too calm. Calm in that a storm is coming, but it's wearing a polite smile kind of way. Servants run, not walk, run, to replace the cloth. They layer new fabric, repin the edges, tighten the corners, until no light, no shape, no reflection can seep through. The Queen steps back. Her morning gown rustles around her like a warning. "This table holds memory," she says quietly. Nothing must disturb it. She returns to her seat, lifts her spoon, and takes another slow, somber bite, as if nothing happened, as if she didn't just unleash atmospheric dread across the entire noble class. Breakfast ends soon after. The Queen rises once more, signaling the close of the ritual. Everyone bows. You bow so low your back makes a noise that is absolutely not a crack. Okay, yes, it was a crack. As she leaves the hall, she touches the wrapped brooch again, then murmurs, "Memory begins with the morning. That is why we must guard it." You follow her out, quiet, respectful, overwhelmed, realizing that breakfast in this palace is not a meal. It is a ceremony, and you're only beginning to understand its weight. You trail the Queen down a corridor so silent it feels like sound has officially resigned from existence. Even your breathing feels intrusive, like your lungs are gossiping too loudly. After breakfast, you thought the day might loosen its grip a little, maybe let everyone relax for 5 collective minutes. But no, this is the palace. This is her world. Relaxation has been put on indefinite administrative leave. This is the rules of footstep silence, and you're about to learn that walking, something you've done successfully since childhood, is now an extreme sport. The Queen glides ahead of you, utterly weightless, her black gown trailing behind like the world's most elegant storm cloud. You envy how quiet she is. If she wanted to sneak up on someone, she could absolutely win gold in the Olympic Games of Stealth. Your shoes, on the other hand, sound like 2 disgruntled muffins slapping the floor. A steward appears beside you without warning. Seriously, how does everyone sneak around so silently here? Do they train in padded obstacle courses? And hands you a pair of black felt overshoes. "Put these on," he whispers. You blink down at them. They're soft, thick, ridiculous looking, like slippers designed by a very depressed elf. "You mustn't echo," he adds, before vanishing again like an anxious magician. You crouch quickly and tug the overshoes on. Instantly, your footsteps become softer, muffled, almost cozy. And yet, according to the nearby maid watching you with terror-wide eyes, still not quiet enough. She presses a finger to her lips. You nod rapidly. She presses harder, as if emphasizing the importance of your mortality. You continue walking, slower, more carefully, imagining the floor is made of sleeping cats. The hallway opens into a long gallery lined with portraits, each figure painted in some state of performing grief, holding a wilted flower, gazing at a dark horizon, clutching a letter dramatically to their chest. Even the cherubs look exhausted, and then you hear it. A single footstep. Yours! Just slightly too loud. You wince. The nobles ahead of you freeze like startled deer. The Queen stops. Time folds in on itself. She turns her head, just enough to acknowledge the noise without fully breaking the ritual's flow. "Footsteps," she says softly, "should move like memory, present but never disruptive." You nod at her, even though she isn't looking. "Yes, Your Majesty," you whisper. But apparently whispering is also loud now because 3 servants flinch. The Queen continues walking. Everyone exhales, relieved the royal disappointment level didn't escalate to catastrophic. You follow, determined to master silent walking if it kills you, which, let's be honest, it might. A historical fact drifts into your mind. In some courts, silence was literally codified. Certain hallways required mute passage, where speaking, humming, or even breathing loudly could cost someone their position. One French noble recorded that he had to walk as though weightless, lest the Queen's sorrow rattle. And here you are, reenacting that tradition, except with felt slippers and mild heart palpitations. The Queen leads you all through an archway into a chamber called the Whisper Court, a name that immediately stresses you out. If a room is named after something you're failing at, it's never good. Inside, the walls are lined with black fabric panels, acoustic barriers designed specifically to erase sound. You test it with the tiniest tap of your finger on the wall. Nothing. No echo, no resonance. Sound doesn't stand a chance here. This chamber, the Queen says, is where silence becomes law. She steps to the center of the room, her presence commanding yet soft, like a candle flame that knows exactly how much attention it deserves. She raises her hand. Everyone drops to an even deeper stillness. "This morning," she says, "I heard footsteps in the east corridor. Your soul ascends directly out of your body. Goodbye, world." It was nice-ish. But she doesn't name you, she doesn't scold you. She simply continues in that measured tone made of velvet and expectations. "Grief," she murmurs, "moves like smoke, and we must not disturb smoke." You try to interpret that metaphor while also trying very hard not to stand out. 2 conflicting missions, both urgent. She lifts her chin slightly. "Demonstration." A guard steps forward. He walks from one end of the chamber to the other. His footfalls are so gentle, so controlled, you barely see him move at all. You wonder if he still has bones. Another guard replicates the motion, then a maid, then a noblewoman. The sequence is so synchronized it's practically a ballet of anxiety. "Now you," the Queen says. Of course she does. Your stomach drops into your slippers, but you walk. Slowly, softly, each foot gliding forward as if skating on sorrow. You barely breathe. You focus on the way the felt absorbs your movement. You imagine you're stepping on clouds, sleepy clouds, grief clouds, the Queen's favorite kind of clouds. When you reach the other end, without producing audible evidence of your existence, the Queen nods slightly. Approval, actual royal approval. You nearly burst into tears, not out of emotion, but out of oxygen deprivation, because you just realized you forgot to breathe for 20 straight seconds. The Queen moves again, drifting forward like a shadow, with purpose. You follow, exhausted and proud, and also mildly concerned about what else she'll ask you to silence today. Your heartbeat? Your hopes and dreams? Probably. As you walk deeper into the palace, the rules tighten. Servants signal one another with hand gestures instead of speech. They avoid corridors lined with certain tapestries because those amplify sounds. They open doors slowly, letting the hinges creak only halfway before guiding them the rest of the way manually. And then you encounter the ultimate test, a child, a toddler, a small, rosy-cheeked, human puddle of chaos toddling into the hallway, chasing a wooden toy. Your entire body tenses. Children are not quiet. Children don't do quiet. They are anti-quiet. The Queen stops immediately. Her gaze shifts toward the child, who looks up at her with the innocence of someone who has absolutely zero awareness of acoustics, ritual, or political consequences. The child opens their mouth. "Oh no! Oh no!" they're going to yell. But the queen kneels slowly, gracefully. Her mourning dress pools around her like a dark tide. The toddler giggles and then, miraculously, whispers, "Hi." Everyone stares. The queen smiles actual, visible softness and places a gentle hand on the child's cheek. "Whispering," she murmurs, "is a kind of magic." The child nods solemnly as though receiving ancient wisdom. You feel something shift in the air, a rare warmth blooming in a palace built entirely of cold ritual. As the queen rises again, she glances at you briefly. Silence teaches us to hear what grief cannot. You don't fully understand what she means, but you feel it, deep, quiet, heavy. A truth shaped by loss. You keep walking, your slippers whispering across the floor in perfect quiet. And for the first time, your footsteps do not betray you. You follow the queen outside for the first time in what feels like ages, though technically it's only been a single morning and part of an afternoon. Time moves differently here. It doesn't flow, it folds, compresses, unspools at odd speeds, depending entirely on the queen's emotional gravity. But now, stepping through the palace's arched doorway into open air, you feel the world exhale for the first time today. This is the Garden of Withered Blooms, and you're about to learn how the queen makes even nature participate in her mourning. The moment your shoes touch the gravel path, a hush falls, not the ceremonial hush of the palace interior, but something gentler. Wind brushes through hedges. Sparrows trill softly. Sunlight filters through the branches in broken patches of gold. It's beautiful. Then you look closer. The beauty is curated, curbed, controlled. Every flower bed has been carefully arranged in muted tones, dusky purples, deep reds, fading whites. Not a single bright bloom in sight. Even the roses, which naturally try to brighten the world with enthusiastic cheer, have been clipped just before they could open fully. Their petals curl inward, as if apologizing for having been too vibrant. A nearby gardener bows deeply as you and the queen approach. He wears gloves the color of ash and carries pruning shears that look too delicate for real gardening and too sharp for comfort. "My queen," he says softly, "the nightshade border has been trimmed as requested." Nightshade. Of course it's nightshade. This woman would absolutely choose a plant that could poison her enemies simply by existing prettily. You glance at one of the flower beds and notice something odd. All the blossoms are bent slightly forward, facing in the same direction, as if bowing. You ask the gardener, "Did you tie them like that?" His eyes widen. No, we simply angle the light this way. Flowers will bow out of longing." Right. Light manipulation as emotional persuasion. Perfectly normal behavior. A strange fringe tidbit floats into your mind. There were medieval gardens specifically designed for grieving queens, with plants chosen for their symbolism. Rue for regret, rosemary for remembrance, pansies for thoughts. Some queens would walk those gardens daily, believing the plants absorbed their sorrow. But your queen? She treats her garden like a cathedral of permanent twilight. The queen steps past you, reaching toward a cluster of wilting white violets. She touches one gently, tracing its limp petal with her fingertip. "They bloomed too brightly last week," she murmurs. "They needed tempering." You're not sure if she means pruning or emotional coaching. You follow her deeper into the garden, gravel crunching underfoot in a soft, mournful rhythm. The path winds between raised beds, stone urns, and carefully trimmed hedges, shaped not into animal figures or playful designs, but into somber forms, wavering arches, drooping shapes, silhouettes that look perpetually mid-sigh. It's a botanical mood board of heartbreak. The Queen gestures for you to join her beside a small, secluded fountain, its water darkened by tinted stones at the bottom, so the surface reflects only shadow. No one looking into this water would see their face clearly. You stand quietly, still learning when silence is expected and when noise is tolerated. "This garden," she says, "is where I come to let grief settle." You nod, though she isn't looking at you. She plucks a dried petal from the edge of the fountain and rolls it between her fingers. "A flower that blooms defiantly," she says, "refuses to understand mourning, but a flower that bends, listens." You look at the bent flowers again. They don't appear sad, just obedient. The Queen steps forward toward a small stone bench. Something rests on it, wrapped in dark silk, of course. Today's mourning object? You hold your breath. She unfolds the fabric just enough to reveal what's inside, a pressed flower encased in glass, fragile, pale, preserved. "This was hers," the Queen whispers, her sister, again, the thread connecting every ritual. "She picked it on a summer morning when she was supposed to be in lessons. She ran into the garden laughing, holding it up to the sun. It was too bright that day." Too bright. There it is again, brightness as a reminder of loss. You wonder if the Queen resents happiness itself, or if she simply cannot bear the contrast between what she lost and what the world stubbornly continues to offer. "Historians will say anything," she continues. "Some claim I keep this garden in shadow to honor her. Others say it's a superstition, or a display of royal power." She turns toward you, eyes soft but unwavering. "They do not know what it is to remember through the world's refusal to grieve with you." You swallow. A lump rises in your throat. You've never been close to power. You've never been close to grief, so intense it reshapes the architecture around it. But standing here, in this meticulously mournful garden, you feel something tug at the edges of your empathy. Just as you're thinking this, a sudden burst of color catches your eye. A single, defiant wildflower, bright yellow, pokes up between stones near the fountain. You gasp a little at the audacity. Color in this economy? The Queen follows your gaze. Her expression remains unreadable. The gardener panics immediately. He rushes over. "My Queen, forgive me. I must have missed." She raises her hand. The gardener stops. The Queen kneels before the wildflower. Quietly, slowly, reverently. You feel every servant stiffen behind you. Birds fall silent. Even the wind seems to pause. She touches the petals, lightly, like they might break from the weight of memory itself. "This," she says, "is what remains when sorrow fails." You're not sure whether that's a criticism or a blessing. Then she plucks the flower, not harshly, not with anger, but with the gentleness of someone removing a fragile reminder of something she cannot afford to face too soon. She hands it to the gardener. "Dry it, store it. It may be useful one day." Useful. You're not sure what useful means in the context of emotional botany, but you don't ask. The Queen walks on and you follow, passing beds of carefully managed sadness. You notice new rituals emerging, servants misting the plants with lightly scented water to encourage subdued hues, gardeners debating whether a bloom has become too hopeful, a noblewoman kneeling before a wilted lily as though confessing sins. And then you realize this garden isn't just for the Queen. It trains everyone in the palace to mourn on command. As you exit through the side gate, gravel crunching softly under your slippers, the wind carries a whisper of lavender and crushed petals. You look back once more at the rows of bent flowers, the dark fountain, the pressed bloom resting on silk. Grief lives here, but so does memory. And somewhere, hidden, restrained, faint, so does the fear of what happens when something blooms too brightly. You re-enter the palace through the west colonnade, your felt slippers padding softly across marble, so polished it reflects shapes, even though every reflective surface is supposed to be covered. You're not sure if this counts as treason, but you decide not to mention it. You've survived this long by keeping your observations strictly internal. This part of the palace feels different, tighter, sharper, heavier somehow, as though the walls have learned too much and refuse to speak of it. Figures drift through the corridors in long black garments, nobles, courtiers, ladies in waiting, each draped like they've been swallowed by shadows and then politely spit back out. This is a court dressed in shadows, where mourning is not just a ritual, it's a dress code, a survival tactic, and a minefield of unspoken rules. You quickly realize the Queen's preference for subdued clothing isn't a gentle suggestion. It is policy, it is expectation, it is oxygen. The nobles who walk past you are so precisely dressed that you begin categorizing their outfits the way ornithologists categorize birds. There's the midnight dove, a noblewoman cloaked in layered silk, dyed the darkest blue, allowed without offending the Queen's love of black. There's the soot falcon, a tall official wearing a tailored coat embroidered with near-invisible patterns of mourning lilies. And then there's the charcoal peacock, a man whose outfit includes a train so long you briefly wonder if it's sentient. You whisper to a passing maid, "Does everyone always dress like this?" She glances around nervously before answering. "We follow the Queen's mourning codes." "Mourning codes?" She nods. "There are 7 levels depending on the day's significance." A historical fact pops into your mind. Many European courts had rigid protocols for mourning attire. Black silk for close family, grey crepe for distant relatives, lavender for the easing of sorrow. But here, this palace has taken the concept and dissolved it into daily life like melancholy seasoning. You take another look at the nobles. Some wear jet black, some wear smoky grey. A few wear a shade so dark purple it's practically arguing its identity. "What level is today?" you whisper. "Level 3, she whispers back. The lingering sorrow tear. "Of course," you murmur, because that sounds completely normal. As you follow the Queen through a grand archway, the room opens into the Hall of Descent, the primary gathering space where nobles attempt to outmourn one another with the devoted enthusiasm of people competing for a royal scholarship in sadness. The sound here is minimal, fabric brushing, soft footsteps, faint sighs, but the emotional volume is cranked to maximum. Everyone bows as the Queen enters. You notice immediately that their posture of grief is curated, chins slightly lowered, shoulders gently rounded, hands either clasped or draped loosely at the sides, too stiff, and you look like you're mocking sorrow, too soft, and you appear insincere. One noblewoman, Lady Carmina, steps forward. Her dress is a layered masterpiece of muted tones, designed to appear as though it has faded naturally over time. You hear whispers behind you. She had her gown dyed twice this morning. She's desperate to get back into the Queen's inner circle. She once wore navy by mistake. Navy! She's still recovering. Lady Carmina bows deeply. "My Queen, the court stands with you today." The Queen nods, serene but unreadable. "Let us continue to honour memory." A murmur of agreement ripples through the room like a wave of sorrowful bees. Behind you, a young nobleman shifts nervously. His coat is a shade lighter than everyone else's, more slate than charcoal. A risky choice. A courtier leans toward him and whispers, "She'll notice." "I ran out of dye," he whispers back. "My valet fainted. What was I supposed to do? Wear something darker." "This is darker." "It is not." You try not to laugh, but a tiny chuckle slips out. Quiet, but not quiet enough. Two courtiers glare at you. You bow your head quickly, pretending to have been struck by a sudden wave of sorrow. A classic move, works every time. But the Queen has moved on. She steps toward a dais at the far end of the hall, where a tapestry of muted silver threads hangs. It depicts an abstract scene, shadows drifting across a field. No one knows what it means, but everyone agrees it's probably deep. The court's appearance, she says softly, is a language of devotion. Every noble nods solemnly. The world forgets too easily, she continues. We will not. Courtiers exchange looks. You sense they're absorbing her words the way farmers absorb storm warnings, carefully, anxiously, with an understanding that the tone predicts the whole day. A steward rolls out a long table draped in black velvet. On it sits a row of small objects, brooches, ribbons, folded handkerchiefs in 7 distinct shades of grey. These, the Queen says, are the tokens of today's observance. One by one, nobles approach the table to select the item corresponding to their status. You realize the mourning codes must be something like Level 1, Absolute Sorrow, Pure Black. Level 2, Deepest Regret, Onyx Grey. Level 3, Lingering Sorrow, Charcoal. Level 4, Tempered Grief, Smoke Grey. Level 5, Reverent Reflection, Dawn Grey. Level 6, Acknowledged Loss, Muted Lavender. Level 7, Considered Joy, rarely used, rumoured forbidden. Historians still argue whether the Queen designed these codes herself or expanded existing traditions until they became unrecognisable. The records are inconsistent, the commentary divided, and the palace scribes suspiciously jumpy whenever anyone asks for documentation. A noble approaches the table and hesitates, just 1 second too long. The Queen watches. The noblewoman falters. Then she chooses a charcoal grey ribbon. A courtier gasps. Someone drops a fan. You inhale sharply. The ribbon she selected belongs to a different mourning level than her garment, a mismatch, a breach in the sacred aesthetic harmony. The Queen doesn't shout, she doesn't frown, she simply tilts her head. We mourn honestly, she says. The noblewoman trembles. Forgive me, my Queen, I misjudged the shade. Grief, the Queen replies, is not a costume to be misjudged. Oof. That is going to echo through noble gossip circles for months. She'll be shading people with that quote until the next dynasty. You watch as Lady Carmina steps forward next. She picks her ribbon with dramatic precision, ensuring everyone sees her impeccable taste and devastating loyalty. A fringe tidbit surfaces in your memory. A duchess from centuries past once hung black crepe over her horses during mourning season to display extraordinary devotion. But even that pales next to this court, where attire isn't just clothing, it's performance art for sorrow. You glance around the room. Everyone is watching everyone, judging the sincerity of each bow, debating the emotional fabric weight of each garment. Mourning here is competitive. The Queen turns suddenly and begins walking toward the corridor, leading back to her private chambers. Everyone bows once more, then disperses in carefully choreographed melancholy. As you follow her out, you overhear whispers. Did you see Lord Vason's collar? Too crisp. He'll hear about it. Lady Marianne's veil was sheer, as though sunlight is acceptable now. Baron Thale claims his outfit faded naturally. I saw the dye stains on his sleeves. You realize something. In this palace, grief is currency and fashion is warfare. Once the corridor empties, the Queen speaks to you without turning. And clothing, she says, is the first truth people see. You nod. Yes, Your Majesty. But it is also the first lie. You feel those words settle deep, like stones in a riverbed. You wonder if she's talking about her court or herself. As you walk, her gown trailing behind her, the palace lights dim slightly. A servant scurries past holding a tray of dark ribbons, another carrying a spool of velvet. The entire palace is getting ready for the next ritual, and you're being pulled deeper into the Queen's world, where shadows are worn as easily as silk, and where mourning isn't just a state of mind. It's a uniform, a performance, a hierarchy, a truth, a court dressed in shadows. And now you're part of it. You follow the Queen into a part of the palace you've never seen before, a narrow, spiralling stairway tucked behind a velvet curtain so thick it feels like brushing past a sleeping bear. The torches along the stairwell burn low, faintly blue at the edges, giving everything a cold, submerged glow. You grip the railing with one hand, your felt slippers barely whispering against the stone steps as you descend into the quietest place you've yet encountered. This is the Archivist of Grief, the chamber where the Queen keeps the memories she can't let go of, and some memories that may not even belong to her. At the bottom of the stairwell, a single iron-bound door waits. A symbol, one you've seen before embroidered into the Queen's cloak, is etched into its centre. A looping knot that looks like a tear folding in on itself. The Queen lifts her hand. The door opens on its own. You try not to flinch. Doors should not behave like this. Doors should squeak or argue or require effort. This one opens like it's afraid of disappointing her. Inside, the chamber glows with soft lamplight that reveals shelves upon shelves of objects. The air is warm and dustless, carrying the faint scent of parchment and something floral, dried lavender crushed into the floorboards, perhaps, or lingering traces of perfume worn by someone long gone. A figure emerges from the dimness, an elderly man with silver hair pulled into a neat tail, his robes layered and heavy with embroidered glyphs. He bows deeply, reverently. "Your Majesty," he says, "the archive awaits." The Queen nods. "We will continue today's cataloguing." You recognize him immediately. This must be the archivist, rumoured to be part historian, part scribe, part therapist, and part keeper of secrets so potent they've bent the palace atmosphere into permanent dusk. "Follow," the Queen murmurs to you. You do, stepping carefully across the polished stone floor. Your slippered feet glide silently, though your heart is loud enough to betray you. The archivist leads you down the central aisle, lit by lanterns veiled in smoky glass. You notice immediately that every item on the shelves is wrapped: cloth, velvet, silk, linen. Layers upon layers, each labelled with a small handwritten tag. She wraps them, the archivist explains quietly, noticing your curiosity. To keep memories from escaping. You nod as though this makes perfect sense. He gestures toward a shelf lined with small, fabric-covered bundles. These are from her childhood: toys, ribbons, letters, pressed flowers, memories softened by time. Then he gestures to another shelf. The items here are larger, heavier. Some are locked in ornate boxes. "And these," he says, "are memories sharpened by loss." The Queen glides past both sets without looking. Instead, she heads toward a third area, the one no one ever mentions aloud. You feel the shift immediately, a heaviness, a tension, a hum in the air like distant thunder. "These," the archivist whispers, "are the imagined memories." You pause. "Imagined?" "Not all grief," he says, "comes from lived events. Some comes from stories we tell ourselves, possibilities we mourn before they happen, moments never lived." You stare at the shelf. Each item here is wrapped in a cloth, darker than the others, almost blue-black, like the sky before a storm. "You mean she mourns things that didn't occur?" He inclines his head gently. Historians still argue whether her rituals preserve truth or create it. She says all grief is real if it feels real. Your skin prickles. The Queen stops before one of the wrapped objects and lifts it carefully. Whatever lies inside is small, light enough for her to hold with one delicate hand. When she was young, the archivist says, she once imagined losing a friend who had not yet left the kingdom. The grief was so strong she held a mourning ritual for 2 days before learning the girl was alive and well. Since then, she has honored both real and imagined tragedies. A strange, fringe tidbit drifts into your thoughts. Ancient courts sometimes kept shadow archives, documents recording omens, dreams, fears, and speculative histories. But even those seemed frivolous compared to this chamber, where unreal memories are treated as reverently as real ones. The Queen unwraps the cloth just enough for you to glimpse the object, a tiny wooden carving of a bird. Unfinished, wings half-formed. This, she says, is what might have been. You swallow. Your Majesty, what does it represent? She looks at the carving with eyes that have seen too much. A gift I meant to give, she murmurs. Before I learned, there would be no chance to give it. The archivist bows his head, a gesture of shared sorrow. You watch as she rewraps the carving, her fingers moving slowly, tenderly. She places it back on the shelf and presses her palm to the cloth, as if sealing the memory in place. The archive, she says softly, must hold truth and possibility. Both shape us. You nod, though you feel wildly out of your depth. You're just someone who came here to serve. You didn't expect to be elbow-deep in metaphysical grief management. As she moves on, you examine some of the tags on the shelves. The day she might have stayed. The letter never sent. The dance never begun. The apology unspoken. Each title hits you like a quiet punch to the chest. These objects, the archivist says, allow her to mourn what could not be and what still might be feared. You glance toward shelves holding real memories, letters, relics, faded fabrics, and realize something startling. The imagined ones are treated with equal weight, maybe more. You follow the Queen deeper into the archive, into a recessed alcove where a single pedestal sits beneath a low-burning lamp. Something rests there, wrapped in cloth so old it seems almost translucent. She doesn't touch this one. She simply stands before it, silent. You dare to ask, "What is this memory, Your Majesty?" She turns her head slightly, just enough to acknowledge your presence without revealing her full expression. "A future I cannot bear," she says. Those 5 words carve a space inside your chest. Something heavy, something fragile, something she keeps wrapped not to forget, but because remembering it too clearly would break her. She lifts her chin. The archive is a sanctuary. It holds the weight, so I may move. The archivist nods solemnly. Each item preserves a fragment. When the Queen mourns, she selects one by instinct. Memory chooses her. You've never heard something more frightening or more poetic. As she heads back toward the staircase, the faintest breeze stirs the cloth-wrapped objects. They rustle, not loudly enough to echo, but enough to feel alive. You follow her upward, emerging back into the palace like surfacing from a deep lake. The door closes behind you with a soft click. As you walk, you can't help but wonder, which memories are waiting for her tomorrow? Which ones will she choose? And which ones will choose you? You barely have time to catch your breath after leaving the archive, your mind still buzzing with images of wrapped memories, imagined tragedies, and futures too painful to unwrap. When the Queen leads you into the West Solarium, a room that was clearly once designed for light, laughter, and social gatherings. Now it's dimmed, veiled, transformed. Black fans flutter softly in the hands of nobles as they gather in tight clusters, whispering behind veils of lace so delicate they resemble cobwebs spun by particularly fashion-conscious spiders. The moment the Queen enters, the conversations drop to a barely-there murmur, the kind of hush that suggests people are absolutely still gossiping, just quietly enough to avoid exile. This is Whispers Behind Black Fans, where mourning becomes a political currency, and the court uses silence with the sharpness of blades. You stand near the Queen's side, your posture appropriately somber, your face bottled into the same expression everyone else wears, respectful sorrow with just a hint of existential dread. A lady-in-waiting approaches, bowing so low her fan nearly brushes the floor. "My Queen," she murmurs. The court gathers in shared remembrance. The Queen nods. "Let them." Her tone is calm, soft, regal. And yet beneath it you sense an undercurrent, something like suspicion or exhaustion. Once the Queen's gaze shifts forward, the lady-in-waiting turns to another noble and flicks her fan twice, a subtle signal. You've started learning the fan language of the court. Every gesture means something. A slow wave, I know something you don't. A rapid flutter, do not speak of it here. A tilt to the right, someone is listening. A tap against the chin. This gossip is fresh, lean closer. And your personal favourite, a sharp snap closed. Abort mission, secrecy compromised. The fans move constantly, dozens of hands, dozens of signals. The room is a living code of concealed conversation. You step closer to hear a group of nobles whispering through their veils, soft, like leaves brushing in wind. She spent 3 hours in the archive this morning. Which shelf? Nobody knows, the archivist won't say. She only visits the future shelf when... Stop! Don't finish that thought. Their fans flick with agitation. Another cluster murmurs nearby. Lord Rathven's ribbon was too light today. His valet claims it faded naturally. His valet is lying, and also very bad at dyeing fabric. If the Queen noticed, she did. Oh no. A murmur of dread. A historical fact knocks quietly on your brain. European courts often used mourning rituals as tools of influence. Who wore what colour, who appeared devastated, who managed to look elegantly sorrowful without crossing into melodrama, these were political signals. But this court? They've turned the entire ritual into a competitive sport of emotional presentation. You notice Lady Carmina, the noblewoman who dyed her dress twice, holding her fan high as she speaks to a group gathered around her. And when I entered the hall, she whispers, Her Majesty looked directly at me, a sign, surely, that she recognizes true devotion. You're 83% certain the Queen did not look at her. But Lady Carmina's ambition is radiant, almost blinding, almost colourful. She fans herself dramatically, ensuring everyone sees the embroidered mourning lilies on her sleeves. Someone leans in. Did you see Baron Thale? He hesitated before choosing his ribbon. Hesitated? A full second. Gasps ripple around them like waves in a shallow pool. A third noble adds, I heard he smiled this morning. A collective shudder. Smiled? Before noon? My goodness! Even you feel yourself judging, which is alarming. Because yesterday you didn't even know the rules existed. The Queen drifts deeper into the room, and the nobles rearrange themselves like a school of panicked fish, ensuring she never sees the wrong combination of people together. Alliances matter, proximity matters, expressions matter. She pauses before a circular table draped in velvet. On it lies a small collection of folded notes, anonymous reports, offerings of memory, confessions the court believes the Queen should hear. She picks one up. The room holds its breath. She unfolds it slowly, eyes scanning the delicate handwriting. Her face reveals nothing. She sets it down quietly. Another note. Another unreadable expression. Then she lifts a third. This time her jaw tightens. Nobles straighten, fans freeze mid-air, your stomach knots. She sets the note aside, not with anger, but with a careful precision more alarming than rage. Truth, she says quietly, does not hide behind paper. Several nobles bow in fear. Someone faints gently into a chair. You lean discreetly toward one of the courtiers. What did the note say? She fans herself once, danger near, and whispers, "No one knows." But if the Queen did not approve? She makes a small gesture across her throat. Not great. Another servant whispers behind you, "The Queen dislikes anonymous criticism. She says sorrow must be accounted for, not scattered." Makes sense, you think, but this palace is big on accountability. And sadness, mostly sadness. Just then, a noblewoman near the far balcony speaks too loudly, that is, above whisper level. "I heard she plans to reopen the council wing." Her fan snaps shut mid-sentence. She pales. Everyone looks to the Queen. But the Queen hasn't noticed. She's staring at a covered mirror across the room. A faint tear in the cloth shifts in the breeze. Her expression softens, then hardens. A storm in a single breath. The nobles wait, watching, weighing, studying the Queen's reaction for any hint about how the rest of the day will go. When she finally turns back to the room, her voice is smooth velvet. Whispers, she says, must remain gentle. If they grow too loud, they become lies. The nobles bow in synchronized panic. The Queen moves toward the exit. You follow. As you leave, fans flick wildly. She heard something. She saw something. The mirror? Was it the mirror? No, the note. It had to be the note. Should we tighten the drapes in the north wing? We should tighten everything. When the doors close behind you, the volume of whispered panic fades. The Queen walks calmly, her gown trailing like a dark river. "People reveal themselves in quiet," she murmurs, not looking at you. "And in fear?" You nod. "Yes, Your Majesty." She glances over her shoulder. "Which do you think they feel more?" You don't answer, because everyone in that room felt both, and so did you. You follow the Queen into a corridor so dimly lit it takes your eyes several seconds to adjust. At first you assume it's yet another hallway where the torches have been deliberately muffled, but then you notice something unsettling. Every single window along the passage, tall, arched, and once designed to flood the palace with morning brilliance, is completely blocked. Thick, velvet drapes, wooden shutters, in some places even iron panels bolted into the stone. This is the daylight she forbids, and you're about to learn exactly why the Queen treats sunlight like a dangerous intruder. She walks ahead of you, unhurried, her steps as soft as always. But there's tension in her shoulders now, subtle, like a thread pulled taut. You've seen her mourn, you've seen her obsess, you've seen her manage a court full of grief performance professionals, but you haven't yet seen her afraid, until now. A draught slips through the corridor, brushing the hem of her gown. She stops immediately. "Close that," she says. A steward panics into action, searching desperately for the source of the breeze. When he finds a tiny crack along the shutter's hinge, he slams another board over it and seals it with nails pulled from his own sleeve. You don't even ask why he carries nails. Some mysteries are better left unsolved. Once the light is barricaded, the Queen continues forward. "Daylight," she murmurs, "reveals too much." You're tempted to ask, "Reveals what?" But you enjoy being alive, so you don't. Instead, you follow her into the obscurity gallery, a long chamber lined with paintings that were once brilliant. You know they were brilliant because their tags describe colours no longer visible. Sunlit meadow, oils, gold leaf, verdant hues, morning portrait, azure silk, pearl accents, wedding at dawn, rose blush, ivory lace. But the paintings themselves, dimmed, muted. Some even glazed over with a thin wash of soot-coloured varnish. You lean toward one. Were these deliberately dulled? A curator appears beside you, quiet as a sigh. On the Queen's orders, too much brightness disrupts the equilibrium of remembrance. You step back, already regretting your question. A historical fact tries to anchor your spiralling thoughts. Certain monarchs did sometimes alter artwork during periods of mourning. Portraits might be veiled, bright tapestries removed, vibrant clothing repainted to match the somber mood. But they did this temporarily. Your Queen? She turned the entire palace into a cave of carefully curated twilight. As you walk down the gallery, you notice portraits where the subjects' faces have shadows painted over their smiles. Sunbeams have been replaced with cloudy skies. Jewels have been darkened to matte stones. Even the dogs have lost their sparkle. And at the far end of the room hangs the largest portrait of all. A depiction of the royal sunrise, painted decades before the Queen's birth. It once showed a horizon blazing with colour. Now it is nearly black. The Queen pauses before it. "This light," she says quietly, touching the frame, "blinded them." You wait for clarification. None comes. Behind you, servants shift nervously. They avoid the painting. They avoid looking at the Queen too directly, as though this memory, whatever it is, casts a shadow wider than the hallway itself. She whispers, "Dawn is a thief." A fringe historical tidbit snaps into your mind. Ancient myths often describe Dawn as a figure who stole shadows, memories, or even souls left wandering from night. Some cultures believed the rising sun scattered spirits that still lingered near the living. In a palace where mirrors are covered to protect moments, this idea suddenly doesn't feel so abstract. The Queen steps away from the painting and enters the northern vestibule, the only place in the palace where you've seen iron shutters layered both outside and inside the windows. A maze of bars, hinges, boards, and fabric muffles any attempt at brightness. This place resembles a fortress defending against an invading army of photons. "If I removed these," the Queen says softly, tracing a fingertip along the reinforced shutter, "Mourning would return too quickly." She turns to you then, the first direct look she's given you in this entire section. Her eyes are darker than you remember, deeper, like there is a sunrise inside them she has spent years trying to bury. "You do not yet understand," she whispers. "Daylight does not comfort." You nod slowly. "Because it reminds you of that morning?" A hush falls over the vestibule. You think you've made a terrible mistake, yet the Queen closes her eyes instead of lashing out. "That morning," she repeats, "stole what I cherished. Light is careless. It reveals endings. It illuminates departures. It does not ask whether you are ready." You feel heat prickle behind your eyes, not your grief, but hers, echoing so strongly it spills over. She steps toward another shuttered window and places her hand flat against the cloth. "If light enters," she murmurs, "memory escapes." You think of the archive, of the wrapped objects, of the mirror symbols, of the imagined memories and the unlived futures. Grief, to her, is not only emotion, it is containment. And daylight breaks containment. She withdraws her hand. "Come," she says, "there is more." You move through another corridor where, curiously, the shutters have tiny peepholes. Servants occasionally look through them, checking the position of the sun. A maid explains in a whisper, "We monitor the angle of morning light to adjust Her Majesty's schedule. Certain rituals cannot begin until the last sharp beam has softened." "Sharp beam?" you ask. She nods gravely. Early sunlight is too bold, too intrusive. It unmakes the day before it begins. You file that under poetic, but terrifying. Further along, a footman is polishing a lantern with tinted glass. The glow that spills out is warm, not bright, just warm, controlled warmth, the kind the Queen tolerates. He bows to you. We create indoor sunrise, he explains. Safe sunrise. You're not sure if that's comforting or deeply dystopian. Eventually the Queen leads you to a small alcove off the main hallway. Here, at last, one window remains uncovered. Light pours through, illuminating the dust in the air. It's beautiful, soft, like honey liquefying in a bowl. You step closer instinctively. The Queen grabs your wrist. The world stills. Do not stand in it, she says, her voice low but firm. Light takes pieces. Your breath catches. Her grip is not harsh, but it holds centuries of belief. But, you begin, it's just light. Her gaze sharpens. It is never just light. You swallow the impulse to argue. The palace has trained that instinct out of you. She releases your wrist slowly, then she steps backward, eyes fixed on that single square of brightness, like it's a creature she refuses to trust. Close it, she commands. A servant rushes to obey, drawing a heavy curtain until the last sliver of gold disappears. You stand there in the returning dimness, your heart thudding quietly. The Queen turns away, already moving toward the next room, her silhouette dissolving back into shadow. As you follow her, you can't stop thinking about that uncovered window, the way the light reached for you, gentle as a hand, and the way she recoiled from it, haunted. You're beginning to understand now, to the Queen, grief is safety. Darkness is shelter. And daylight, warm, ordinary daylight, is the most dangerous thing of all. You follow the Queen into a quieter wing of the palace, where the walls feel closer and the air hangs heavier. It's the kind of corridor that swallows footsteps, breath, even thoughts if you're not careful. You know where she's leading you before she says a word, because everyone in the palace whispers about this one place, the place where sorrow and vanity collide in a strange, delicate war. This is the portrait she refuses to finish, a problem so old and tangled that even the palace painters walk around with permanent stress wrinkles. The Queen stops before a tall set of carved wooden doors. The carvings depict scenes of artistic triumph, painters presenting masterpieces, sculptors shaping marble, weavers lifting tapestries, shimmering with gold threads. All of these scenes glow with pride and accomplishment, which is, in itself, ironic, because no accomplishment has ever come from the room behind these doors. She pushes them open without ceremony. Inside, the royal atelier stretches wide, filled with the faint smell of turpentine, old canvas, and lavender sachets placed in every corner to soothe the oppressive nature of creation. According to his sign, someone has hung meekly near the entrance. The first thing you notice, portraits, everywhere. Dozens of canvases lean against walls, stacked on easels, hung with cloths draped over them. Some are half-finished, some nearly complete. Some bear only the lightest sketch of her silhouette. All of them have one thing in common. The Queen is never shown in full. Either her face is obscured, or her expression unfinished, or her eyes left blank, or her entire form washed in shadow. The Queen steps inside, her gaze gliding across the room as though checking for intruders. A painter, you think his name is Master Elian, though you've only ever seen him look terrified, rushes forward. His smock is stained with charcoal and paint, and he bows so deeply he nearly folds in half. "My Queen," he says, voice quivering. The latest attempt is prepared." You try not to wince on his behalf. The Queen nods. "Show me." He gestures to an easel draped with dark cloth. His hand trembles as he lifts it away. There she is, or rather, there she would be. The painting shows her standing in a soft cascade of mourning silk, illuminated by a muted morning glow. The studio's tinted lamps make even simulated light feel respectful. Her posture is regal, her presence undeniable. But the face is unfinished. You can see the outline of her features, the beginnings of shadow and contour. But the eyes are blank. Not blank because they are unfinished, but blank like the painter tried, or feared, to paint something there and failed. The Queen moves closer. You brace yourself. She tilts her head slightly. Her expression is unreadable. "Why did you stop here?" she asks softly. Master Elian swallows, colour draining from his cheeks. "I attempted the eyes, Your Majesty, but they did not reflect correctly. The emotion escaped." You blink. "Escaped?" He nods miserably. The grief would not stay on the canvas. You glance at the Queen. She doesn't seem surprised. "Show me," she commands. Elian hesitates. Then he reaches for a second canvas leaning against the wall. This one is covered not in cloth, but in a sheet of thin, translucent parchment, as though the contents are too sensitive to hide completely, but too dangerous to reveal casually. He lifts the parchment slowly. You gasp. The painting beneath is vibrant, alive, luminous. The Queen stands beneath a bright, bold dawn sky, colours swirling warmly around her. Her face, her eyes, they burn with clarity, emotion, fierce humanity. It's stunning, but your stomach tightens. This is the kind of painting she would hate. She looks at it for a long, long moment. Her expression remains perfectly still, but everything around her seems to quiver, like the air itself is bracing. "This," she says quietly, "is false." Elian nearly collapses. "Forgive me, Your Majesty, I meant only this light," she cuts in, her voice still soft, "is not mine." She reaches out, touching the canvas with her fingertips. The gesture is gentle, painfully gentle, the way someone touches a memory they wish they could keep but know they can't. "When you paint me," she whispers, "you must paint truth." Elian trembles. "I tried, Your Majesty." "No." She steps back. "You painted hope." Hope. The forbidden word in this palace. Historians still argue whether the Queen's refusal to complete her portrait stems from superstition. Some rulers feared portraits could trap their souls, or whether her grief makes her unwilling to see herself fully reflected. No one agrees. No record confirms. The debate is endless. But now, standing here, you think you understand. A finished portrait would force her to face herself fully, completely, honestly. Grief thrives in shadows, truth glows, and she cannot bear the glow. The Queen turns away from the bright portrait. "Cover it." Elian obeys instantly, pulling the parchment back into place as though sealing away a dangerous artifact. She walks to another canvas, this one half-sketched. The outline of her face is faint, her expression barely forming. She touches the empty eyes. "I do not know myself well enough," she murmurs, "to allow others to see me." You inhale quietly. She withdraws her hand. The painters remain frozen in terror, or awe. You can't tell which. She turns to leave, but pauses at the doorway, glancing back at you and the unfinished faces behind her. Grief distorts, she says softly. Light reveals too much, and my likeness must remain between the two. Then she leaves. The painters exhale collectively, like a deflating bellows. You wander through the atelier for a moment, examining the many attempts. In some she looks regal, in others hollow, in most blurred, like the painters couldn't quite commit to capturing someone who refuses to be fully seen. You brush your hand near one of the canvases. Not touching, just feeling the air. You imagine what version of her the painter had hoped to immortalize. Before you go, Master Elion approaches, wringing his paint-stained hands. "She will never let us finish," he whispers. "Why?" He glances toward the doorway where she disappeared. "Because a finished portrait has edges," he says, "and the Queen lives in sorrow, without edges." You step out of the room, pulling the heavy doors shut behind you, and you realize, in a palace full of shadows, the only thing more frightening than darkness is what she might see in the light. You follow the Queen through a velvet-draped archway into a quieter part of the palace. Quiet in a different way than before. Not ceremonial quiet, not curated mourning quiet. This is the hush of expectation, the kind of silence that gathers around doorways where diplomats wait, where decisions shape dynasties, where futures are negotiated with a pen's stroke and a nod. You've entered the Hall of Suitors, though no one dares call it that aloud anymore. This is the suitors she sends away, the place where royal marriage becomes a battlefield, not of romance, but of grief. The Queen moves slowly, her gown whispering behind her like a long exhale. Her posture is steady, regal, but her eyes carry that deep inwardness you've come to recognize, a gaze that sees more memory than present. Two attendants open the tall double doors, revealing a chamber you've never been in. Sunlight was clearly meant to stream through the towering windows, but of course it doesn't. Heavy velvet curtains smother every pane, turning the room into a kind of mausoleum for hope. Rows of carved chairs line the center aisle, each faced toward a dais where marriage agreements would once have been presented. You picture diplomats waiting here with hopeful smiles and wilted flowers, trying desperately to charm a queen whose heart has long since been buried beneath layers of sorrow. Now the chairs are empty, the dais untouched, the contracts long since dismissed. You step inside, sensing a tension that's older than any of today's rituals, a scar in the palace walls themselves. A steward approaches the Queen cautiously. "Your Majesty, Lord Arundale's envoy has arrived. He awaits your consideration." The Queen's jaw tightens. "Consideration is not required." "My Queen," the steward says carefully, "his kingdom anticipates a response." She exhales. You feel the temperature in the room shift. "Then they will receive one," she says, "the same as all the others." The steward bows and retreats. You dare a question in the softest voice you can manage. "Your Majesty, why do suitors still come?" Her answer is immediate. "Because other kingdoms believe grief can be cured with alliances." She looks at you. But grief is not an illness. It's astonishing how conviction anchors her grief, how identity has woven itself into her mourning until the two are indistinguishable. You walk with her down the aisle. Dust motes drift in the dim light, catching on the folds of her dress. When she reaches the dais, she touches the edge of the table where marriage petitions once sat. "This place," she says, "used to hold promises." You wait. She rarely speaks of her past so directly. "When I first took the throne," she continues, "there were negotiations. Many were eager to bind their lineage with mine. They spoke of love, alliance, stability. They quoted poetry, brought gifts, composed songs." She pauses, tracing the curve of the carved wood. "They believed my heart could be persuaded." You tilt your head. Could it have been? A faint smile, not joyous but reflective, touches her lips. "Once," she whispers, "before loss taught me that devotion invites breakage." You feel the weight of that sentence settle into the air like dust. A historical fact floats into your mind. Many monarchs postponed or refused marriage after tragedy, whether from personal grief or political strategy. Queen Christina of Sweden famously refused all proposals, citing her freedom and intellect, while others hesitated because their mourning reshaped how they saw duty and affection. Historians still argue whether grief influenced these decisions more than politics. But in this palace, it's clear politics kneels before sorrow. A sudden knock echoes from the chamber doors. A young diplomat enters, bowing so deeply he nearly face-plants. "My queen," he says breathlessly. "Envoy of Lord Arundel requests audience." She motions for him to step aside. A tall envoy enters, clad in muted silver, trying desperately to honor palace mourning codes while still representing his own kingdom's style. He carries a scroll sealed in dark wax. "Your Majesty?" he begins, voice trembling. "Lord Arundel sends deepest respects. He wishes to offer—" "No." He blinks. "But, Your Majesty, he has prepared—" "No." Her voice is calm, unyielding, a river carved through stone. The envoy swallows, glancing nervously toward you for assistance. You look away. You refuse to be involved in this man's political doom spiral. "My queen," he tries again, "he hopes you might reconsider. He has heard that your heart remains unclaimed, and—" She steps forward. The room stills. "My heart," she says, "is not unclaimed. It is occupied." The envoy hesitates. "By whom?" She lifts her chin slightly. "By memory." The envoy's shoulders slump, defeated. He bows again, gripping the scroll to his chest. "I will deliver your answer, Your Majesty." When he leaves, the chamber seems to exhale. "I send them away," the queen murmurs, "not to you specifically, but to the air, because love cannot bloom while grief remains the root." You think of her garden, each flower bent, each color muted, each bloom reshaped into sorrow. You think of the archive, objects wrapped because memory must not escape. You think of the daylight she forbids because it reveals too much. You begin to understand. To marry would mean opening herself to a future, but futures are dangerous. Futures can shatter. The queen turns to you. "Do you think me foolish for refusing them?" "No," you say honestly. "I think you protect yourself." She nods, as though she expected your response. "But protection," she says, "is a lonely kingdom." A small rustle comes from the back of the chamber. A noblewoman peeks in, looking pale. She whispers, "My queen, shall we prepare the Hall of Remembrance for your evening observance?" The queen nods gently. "Yes. I will attend shortly." The noblewoman bows and slips out. You watch her go, then turn back to the queen. "Do you ever regret it?" you ask softly. "Sending them away?" Her eyes drift toward a tall, draped painting at the far end of the room, a canvas that's been covered for years. You didn't notice it before. It stands apart from the others, as though it hides something particularly dangerous. She walks toward it. You follow, careful not to step too loudly. She places her hand on the cloth. "Regret," she whispers, "is a luxury for those who believe they can change the past." She closes her eyes. "I do not." She leaves the cloth in place. Whatever lies beneath it remains unseen, unfaced. You suspect that behind the fabric is a portrait not of her, like in the atelier, but of someone else, someone she loved, someone whose absence hollowed out the palace long before you arrived, a story none of the courtiers dare to tell, a grief too deep for even the archive. You wonder if this is the true reason she refuses suitors, not political strategy, not ritual, not duty, but loyalty to someone gone. When she steps away, her movements are slow, weighted like she's carrying years on her shoulders. "Come," she says. You follow, stepping past rows of empty seats. Seats once meant for negotiations, celebrations, alliances. Instead, they now bear only shadows. At the doorway, she pauses. "One day," she says softly, "they will stop sending suitors. They will realize what I have always known." You wait. "That mourning," she whispers, "is the only vow I can keep." She walks away, and you follow deeper into a palace where love is exiled and grief wears the crown. You follow the queen through a narrow hallway that curves like a spine, quiet, dim, lined with sconces burning low. You're still thinking about the hall of suitors, about the envoy she dismissed with such effortless finality, about the portrait she refused to uncover. The weight of her sorrow trails behind her like an echo. But as you step into the next room, you feel something shift. The air is different here, lighter, sharper, awake. This is the East Refectory, though no one uses it for meals anymore. Today, its vaulted ceiling lets in just enough filtered light to make the far edges glow. Rows of tall, narrow windows are covered with thin cloth, not velvet, not blackout silk, but sheer mourning linen that dims the outside world without smothering it completely. And standing in the center of the room, hands clasped behind their back, spine straight, with the stubborn posture of someone too young to care about protocol, is the heir. The one no one talks about. The one who hasn't fully learned how to live inside the Queen's shadow. The one who is about to disrupt everything. This is the heir who breaks the pattern. The Queen pauses several steps inside the room. Her expression glosses into calm, but you feel an undercurrent of tension in her stillness. Something brittle. The heir turns at the sound of her footsteps. You're startled by the immediate contrast. Where the Queen is shadow and velvet and curated sorrow, the heir is brightness, muted only out of respect. Their clothes are dark, but the silhouette is lighter. Their eyes are not heavy, their stance is not bowed. Their presence feels like fresh air in a palace built from stale breath. "Mother," the heir says. You blink. Mother. No one calls her that aloud, not even the court. Not even in private. She is always Your Majesty, a title sturdier than armor, but from the heir the word is both rebellion and belonging. The Queen inclines her head. You wish to speak. Yes. The heir doesn't bow, not fully. A slight dip of the chin, respect, but not surrender. We need to address the council wing. The Queen's gaze cools a degree. There is nothing to address. The council disagrees. The council, she says, will follow my decree. The heir's jaw tightens. Your decree keeps the palace in permanent mourning. Diplomats hesitate to visit. Neighboring nations call us the kingdom of endless dusk. Merchants avoid our markets because buyers refuse to negotiate in dim corridors. The Queen turns slightly away. These matters are temporary. No, the heir says, stepping forward. They've become our identity. The room stills. Even the breeze against the shrouded windows seems to pause. You try to disappear into your own spine because whatever is happening is well above your emotional pay grade. You are witnessing something the court only whispers about, the quiet, building tension between duty and generational pain. The heir softens their tone. Mother, I know sorrow shaped you. I know what you lost. Silence. Sharp. Cold. But I did not lose the same things, the heir continues. And I cannot rule a kingdom with no mourning. The Queen exhales. A sound so faint you almost mistake it for cloth shifting. This is not about ruling, she says. This is about remembering. It can be both, the heir insists. It must be. You see a muscle tighten along the Queen's jaw. Her grief is a fortress. No one has ever dared to knock on its gates. except the heir who was raised inside it, who knows its contours, who believes they can navigate its darkness. Historians still argue whether heirs who challenged mourning traditions strengthened or fractured their kingdoms. Records conflict. Some say such heirs brought renewal, others say they destabilized dynasties steeped too tightly in ritual. But none of them lived this moment, in this dim room, where legacy collides with loss. The heir walks toward one of the windows. You tense. Everyone in the palace knows the Queen forbids daylight. Even filtered daylight is dangerous territory. The heir grips the curtain. We can start with the council wing. Nothing dramatic, just... The Queen's voice cuts through the room. Do not open that. The heir freezes. Mother. Do not, the Queen repeats, open that. Her voice is still soft, but beneath it lies a tremor you've never heard before. Not fragility, but fear. Raw fear. The heir releases the curtain gently. It's only light. The Queen's hand curls at her side. Light takes pieces. You taught me that, the heir replies, but you never explain what pieces. The Queen does not answer. You feel something in the air, like a thread pulled too tight, threatening to snap. The heir senses it too. They step closer, lowering their voice. Mother, I can't lead a kingdom trapped in mourning. If we never open the windows, who are we protecting? You, us, or the past? The Queen's eyes flicker. We protect what must not be lost. But what if we are what's being lost? Your breath catches. The Queen turns fully toward the heir now, and for the first time you see her expression change, not to anger, but to something more painful. Panic held beneath perfect calm. You do not understand, she whispers. Then help me understand, the heir pleads. A long silence stretches between them, heavy enough to soften the walls. The Queen looks down. Grief, she says slowly, is the only constant I have left. If I let the light in, if I allow the day to begin again, I fear I will forget. You feel that sentence sink to the floor like spilled ink. The heir steps forward until they stand directly before her. Tentatively, carefully, they lift a hand and place it atop hers. You won't forget, the heir says. You will heal. The Queen's breath trembles. No, she whispers. Healing is another kind of losing. You realize then her mourning is not devotion, it's preservation. The sorrow keeps her connected to those she lost. Letting go would feel like abandoning them. The heir squeezes her hand gently. You are not the only one who remembers her. The Queen closes her eyes. You see the truth hit her, quiet, heavy, unexpected. Maybe she has never allowed herself to consider that others grieve too. That grief shared doesn't diminish the lost, only distributes the weight. But then her hand slips out of the heir's. We cannot change the pattern, she says softly. Not yet. Then when? The heir asks. She doesn't answer. The heir steps back, hurt threaded through their posture, but not defeated. This kingdom needs mourning, they say quietly. And one day, whether you allow it or not, it will come. The Queen turns away, and you feel the palace shift ever so slightly, like a curtain being tugged by an unseen breeze. A crack in the pattern, a hesitation in the ritual. A seed of change planted by someone who refuses to inherit a kingdom of endless mourning. As the heir leaves the room, they glance at you briefly. Just enough for you to see determination there. A fire dimmed, but not extinguished. The Queen watches them go, her silhouette sharp against the dim, linen-covered windows. Mourning, she murmurs, almost to herself, is not ready. But her tone betrays something the court has never heard from her. uncertainty. You follow the queen into the heart of the palace. The oldest part, built before mourning was a language, before sorrow became architecture. Here the walls feel heavier, wider, and somehow wiser. The air hums faintly, like a low bell struck far away. It smells of stone and candle wax, and something else. Anticipation. Tonight is no ordinary night. This is the night the bells return, and you're about to witness what happens when a single, forbidden sound breaks 12 years of curated silence. The queen walks steadily, her silhouette cutting through the candlelit hall like a blade. You can still feel the echo of tension from earlier. Her conversation with the air, the question she refused to answer, the weight of grief shifting like a storm cloud, unsure whether to break or hold. Ahead, double doors stand open, revealing the Hall of Echoes, a chamber so vast it swallows sound. High ceilings arch like the ribs of a grand cathedral. The walls are adorned with tapestries so dark they seem to drink the torchlight. Servants line the perimeter, holding candles shielded by blackened glass. Courtiers gather quietly, arranged in solemn semicircles. Their faces flicker with unease. You know something is different tonight because none of them dare whisper behind their fans. Not a single cloth rustles. Not even the most dramatic noblewoman attempts a performative sigh. You lean toward the steward beside you. What's happening? He swallows. The bells of dawn will be rung. You blink. But isn't that forbidden? He finishes. Yes. A ripple of energy travels through the room as the queen steps onto the central dais. Her expression is unreadable, but the set of her shoulders is rigid enough to crack stone. At the far end of the hall, two massive bells, long dormant, wrapped in heavy fabric for more than a decade, hang from wooden beams. Their metal is darkened from neglect, etched with dust and memory. These bells once marked the beginning of each day in the kingdom. They rang at dawn, symbolic and ancient. A gesture of renewal, of possibility. But on that morning, the one no one speaks of, the one the air alluded to, the one that scarred the queen into perpetual mourning, the bells rang just moments before tragedy struck. Since that day, she has forbidden them. 12 years, no bell, no dawn, no permission for the day to begin. A courtier steps forward, trembling. "My queen, we await your command." The queen lifts her chin. "Begin the observance." A collective inhalation. This is happening. You step back slightly as the entire room shifts into ceremonial formation. The nobles kneel. The servants lower their candles. The musicians, usually silent, step to the side, holding instruments wrapped in cloth as though scared to expose them. Then unexpectedly someone else enters. The air. They walk with purpose, head high, dressed not in the darkest morning shade, but in a twilight grey cloak, a colour that borders on rebellion, a colour that suggests not grief, but transition. Whispers ripple, carefully, quietly, but no one stops them, not even the queen. They step beside her. For the first time the court sees them standing not as child and mother, not as heir and monarch, but as two forces of equal gravity on the verge of collision. The heir bows slightly. "I will stand with you." The queen does not respond verbally, but something in her posture softens. 1 degree, 1 breath. The grand chanté steps forward, opening a small book covered in dusk-coloured leather. He inhales and begins to speak in a low, rhythmic voice. "We gather under shadow, for shadow remembers. We gather without dawn, for dawn betrays." The queen closes her eyes. You can feel the room pulsing with emotion, fear, reverence, confusion. The heir watches her closely. The chanter continues, "But on this night, when memory trembles, we call to the bells that have slept through grief." He signals the bell keepers. Two men, each wearing soot-black gloves, step forward. They untie the fabric covering the bells. The cloth falls away like shedding skin. Gasps ripple. The bells gleam faintly, golden metal hidden beneath years of quiet. You feel your stomach twist. They look hungry to ring. The Queen raises her hand. The room freezes. Her voice is soft, but it pierces the silence like light through shutters. Before the bells sound, she says, let it be known why they fell silent. The hall holds its breath. My sister died at dawn, she says. The bells rang, and the morning took her. The court absorbs this in solemn, trembling quiet. And so I forbade dawn, she continues. I forbade beginnings. I forbade hope. The heir takes a step closer. But, she says, voice wavering, memory is not preserved by fear. You feel your chest tighten. Not even the courtiers dare move. I have held the darkness, she whispers, but tonight I will let it answer me. She lowers her hand. The bell-keepers grip the ropes. The heir looks at her, really looks, and something unspoken passes between them. A recognition, a surrender, a shared grief stretching across years. The Queen nods once. The first bell tolls. The sound is enormous, deep, ancient, resonant. You feel it in your bones, in your teeth, in the memory of every night you've spent in this palace. A shockwave of emotion surges through the room. Some nobles tremble, some cry silently. A maid collapses into another's arms. A few stare upward as though the ceiling might split open. The Queen sways as if struck. The heir grabs her arm, steadying her. The Queen does not pull away. The second bell tolls. The sound is brighter, less sorrow, more dawn. It vibrates through the chamber, rattling dust from hidden corners, shaking candles in their holders. You feel your eyes burn. Not from sadness, from something like relief. Like breath after holding it too long. The Queen grips the heir's hand. A final silence settles, heavy but no longer suffocating. When she finally speaks, her voice is trembling. The bells have returned, she whispers, and with them, the day. A murmur of awe spreads through the room. The heir smiles faintly. This is the beginning. Perhaps, the Queen says, or perhaps only the loosening. Then she turns, and the court bows deeply as though witnessing a miracle. But you realize something more subtle, more fragile, more human has occurred. A fracture, a shift, a first crack in her lifelong dusk. The palace isn't bright yet, not even close. But for the first time, the night has been challenged, and morning, slow, patient, persistent, has started to knock. The bells still seem to echo in your bones as you follow the Queen through the midnight corridors of the palace. Strange how sound lingers, even long after silence has returned. The palace feels different now, subtly altered, like a room after someone has moved the furniture an inch to the left. Nothing has changed fundamentally, but everything feels off balance in a way that unsettles the heart. Tonight is the first night in years where the air feels less heavy, and yet the Queen looks heavier. As if releasing those two tolls extracted something from her, something she has carried so fiercely for so long that setting it down has left her unsteady. This is the final unveiling of light, and you are about to witness the moment where her lifelong obsession unravels, slowly, painfully, inevitably. The heir walks at her side, close but not touching, as though afraid physical contact might frighten her back into ritual. She doesn't speak, neither does the Queen. You simply move as a trio through a palace, adjusting to its own trembling heartbeat. Eventually, the Queen pauses in front of a familiar velvet curtain. You recognize it instantly. The mirror corridor, the place where reflections are draped, where memory lies hidden, where she once instructed you that reflections steal presence. Tonight, however, something has changed. The curtain looks looser. The Queen reaches out, not to tighten it, but to lift it. Your breath catches. She reveals a single, long hallway lined with mirrors, still covered, but less tightly. Some cloths sag, one is slightly crooked. The corridor smells faintly of dust and lavender, a familiar combination. She steps inside, the air follows. You follow too, unsure if you're witnessing a sacred moment or a dangerous one. "Mother," the air says softly, "you don't have to do this tonight." "I do," the Queen replies. Her voice is softer than you've ever heard it. "Not for you, not for them, for her, her sister." You feel the corridor shift, emotionally, not physically. Memories cling to the walls like vines. She stops in front of the largest mirror, the double-draped one, the one embroidered with silver thread symbols, meant to keep memory from escaping. Her reflection hovers faintly beneath the layers, a ghost behind a ghost. She doesn't touch it, not yet. The air stands beside her. The bells are not dawn itself. They're only a beginning. "That is why they frighten me," the Queen whispers. You stand a few steps behind them, silent, as though the slightest noise could shatter the fragile moment taking shape. She takes a breath, long, trembling, deliberate. "When we lost her," she murmurs, "I believed light betrayed us, that it revealed loss too clearly, that staying in shadow would keep memory close." Her hand lifts toward the drape. But shadows hide more than they preserve. Her fingers curl around the cloth. The air steps forward. You don't have to uncover it all at once. "I know." She pulls gently. The top layer falls away. Your heart jumps. It's almost too loud in the hush, but the Queen doesn't flinch. The second drape remains, a thin barrier between her and the truth she's feared for years. The air whispers, "Mother, please, let yourself see." She hesitates, her hand trembling above the cloth. Then she lowers it. "I have lived too long in mourning," she says. "Let this be the last night I hide from the day." She grips the cloth again, firmer this time, and pulls. The final drape falls. You're not prepared for what you see. The mirror is not bright. It is not sharp. It does not reflect clearly. The surface is clouded, tarnished with age, rippled slightly, like a pond disturbed by wind. But you see her reflection. Not the Queen who clings to ritual, not the sovereign who forbids dawn, but a tired woman with eyes softer than sorrow should allow. She inhales sharply. The air steadies her elbow. Behind her reflection, faintly, barely visible, you think you see a second figure. A woman with gentle features, bright eyes, a shape of memory pressed into the mirror's imperfections. Her sister. Was it real? A trick of light? A symbolic fragment? Historians still argue whether mirrors can retain imprints of the past in subtle distortions. Some say it's superstition. Others believe grieving minds project what the heart still aches to see. But here, in this moment, it doesn't matter, because the Queen sees her. Her breath breaks into a soft sob, not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet, shattering release of years held too tightly. She touches the mirror, not to hide it, but to steady herself. "You look the same," she whispers. "I do not." The air steps closer, voice trembling. "You're still here, Mother. That's enough." The Queen closes her eyes. A tear slips down her cheek, trailing slowly, catching the dim torchlight. Her voice is fragile, not with despair, but with acceptance. "It is time," she says, "to let the morning in." You feel something shift inside the palace, like a long locked window cracking open. She steps back from the mirror. The air takes her hand, carefully, gently, and this time she does not pull away. Together they walk out of the corridor. You follow silently, your chest tight with something you can't fully name. Grief is not gone. Grief never leaves fully, but it has loosened its grip. And as the three of you ascend the palace steps toward the eastern balcony where, for the first time in years, the shutters have been unbarred, you hear the faint rustle of curtains being drawn back in distant rooms. You hear whispered prayers of surprise. You hear Mourning waking. Then a sliver of dawn touches the Queen's hand. She doesn't recoil. She lifts her face into the light, eyes closed, breathing deeply, as if meeting an old friend she once feared. The air watches her with a quiet, trembling relief. And you watch both of them, witnessing not just an end, but a beginning. And now, as the palace softens into its first gentle morning in years, your own breathing settles, slower, steadier, drifting into a quieter rhythm. Let the last traces of lantern glow fade in your mind. Let the hush of dawn settle around your shoulders like a warm, lighter cloak. Even the Queen, wrapped for so long in shadow, now stands unguarded, letting the world ease forward, one softened moment at a time. You can imagine the sunlight spreading slowly across stone floors, warming the cold corners, lifting the heaviness that once settled there. And as that soft brightness widens, your thoughts become gentler, softer, a little more distant. Let your body sink deeper into stillness. Let your eyes grow heavier. Let your breath become the faintest whisper of calm. You are safe, you are steady, and the night is finally quiet.